Good morning and welcome to Tuesdays with the Pilgrim. Today we read the end of the Screwtape letters by C.S. Lewis with the epilogue entitled Screwtape Proposes a Toast. The scene is in hell at the annual dinner of the Tempter's Training College for Young Devils. The principal, Dr. Slubgob, has just proposed the health of the guests. Screwtape, a very experienced devil who is the guest of honor, rises to reply. "Mr. Principal, your eminence, your disgraces, my thorns, shadies, and gentle devils. It is customary on these occasions for the speaker to address himself chiefly to those among you who have just graduated and who will very soon be posted to official tempterships on earth. It is a custom I willingly obey. I well remember with what trepidation I awaited my own first appointment. I hope and believe that each one of you has the same uneasiness tonight. Your career is before you. Hell expects and demands that it should be, as mine was, one of unbroken success. If it is not, you know what awaits you. I have no wish to reduce the wholesome and realistic elements of terror, the unremitting anxiety which must act as the lash and spur to your endeavors. How often you will envy the humans their faculty for sleep. Yet at the same time I would wish to put before you a moderately encouraging view of the strategical situation as a whole. Your dreaded principal has included in a speech full of points something like an apology for the banquet which he has set before us. Well, gentle devils, no one blames him, but it would be in vain to deny that the human souls on whose anguish we have been feasting tonight were of pretty poor quality. Not all the most skilful cookery of our tormentors could make them better than insipid. Oh, to get one's teeth again into a Farinata, or a Henry VIII, or even Hitler! There was real crackling there, something to crunch, a rage, an egotism, a cruelty only just less robust than our own. It put up a delicious resistance to being devoured. It warmed your innards when you got it down. Instead of this, what have we tonight? There was a municipal authority with graft sauce, but I personally could not detect in him the flavor of that really passionate and brutal avarice such as delighted one in the great tycoons of the last century. Was he not unmistakably a little man, a creature of the petty rake-off pocketed with a petty joke in private and denied with the stalest platitudes in his public utterances? A grubby little nonentity who had drifted into corruption, only just realizing that he was corrupt, and chiefly because everyone else did it. Then there was the lukewarm casserole of adulterers. Could you find in it any trace of fully inflamed, defiant, rebellious, insatiable lust? I couldn't. They all tasted to me like undersexed morons who had blundered or trickled into the wrong beds in automatic response to sexy advertisements, or to make themselves feel modern and emancipated, or to reassure themselves about their virility or their normalcy, or even because they had nothing else to do. Frankly, to me, who tasted Messalina and Casanova, they were nauseating. The trade unionist stuffed with sedition was perhaps a shade better. He had some real harm. He had not quite unknowingly worked for bloodshed, famine, and the extinction of liberty. Yes, in a way. But what a way! He thought of those ultimate objectives so little. Towing the party line, self-importance, and above all mere routine were what really dominated his life. But now comes the point. Gastronomically, all this was deplorable. But I hope none of us puts gastronomy first. Is it not, in another far more serious way, full of hope and promise? Consider first the mere quantity. The quality may be wretched, but we have never had souls of a sort in more abundance. And then the triumph. We are tempted to say that such souls, or such residual puddles of what was once a soul, are hardly worth damning. Yes, but the enemy, for whatever inscrutable and perverse reason, thought them worthy of trying to save. Believe me, he did. You youngsters who have not yet been on active duty have no idea with what labor, with what delicate skill, each of these miserable creatures was finally captured. The difficulty lay in their very smallness and flabbiness. Here were vermin so muddled in mind, so passively responsive to the environment, that it was very hard to raise them to that level of clarity and deliberateness at which mortal sin becomes possible. To raise them just enough, but not that fatal millimeter of too much, for then, of course, all would possibly have been lost. They might have seen, they might have repented. On the other hand, if they had been raised too little, they would very possibly have qualified for limbo, as creatures suitable neither for heaven nor hell. Things that, having failed to make the grade, are allowed to sink into a more or less contented subhumanity forever. In each individual choice of what the enemy would call the wrong turning, such creatures are at first hardly, if at all, in a state of full spiritual responsibility. They do not understand either the source or the real character of the prohibitions they are breaking. Their consciousness hardly exists apart from the social atmosphere that surrounds them. And of course we have contrived that their very language should be a smudge and blur. What would be a bribe in someone else's profession is a tip or a mere present in theirs. The job of their tempters was first, of course, to harden these choices of the hell-worthy roads into a habit by steady repetition. But then, and this was all important, to turn the habit into a principle the creature is prepared to defend. After that, all will go well. Conformity to the social environment, at first merely instinctive or even mechanical, how should a jelly not conform, now becomes an unacknowledged creed or ideal of togetherness or being like folks. Mere ignorance of the law they break now turns into a vague theory about it. Remember, they know no history. A theory expressed by calling it conventional or Puritan or bourgeoisie morality. Thus gradually there comes to exist at the center of the creatures a hard, tight, settled core of resolution to go on being what it is, and even to resist moods that might tend to alter it. It is a very small core, not at all reflective, they are too ignorant, nor defiant, their emotional and imaginative poverty excludes that, almost in its own way prim and demure, like a pebble or a very young cancer. It will serve our turn. Here at last is a real and deliberate, though not fully articulate, rejection of what the enemy calls grace. These, then, are two welcome phenomena. First, the abundance of our captors, however tasteless our fare, we are in no danger of famine. And secondly, the triumph, the skill of our tempters has never stood higher. But the third moral, which I have not yet drawn, is the most important of all. The sort of souls on whose despair and ruin we have, well, I won't say feasted, but at any rate subsisted, tonight, are increasing in numbers and will continue to increase. Our advices from the lower command assure us that this is so. Our directives warn us to orient our tactics in view of the situation. The great sinners, those in whom vivid and genial passions have been pushed beyond the bounds, and in whom an immense concentration of will has been devoted to objects which the enemy abhors, will not disappear, but they will grow rarer. Our catches will be ever more numerous, but they will consist increasingly of trash which we should once have thrown to the Cerberus and the hellhounds as unfit for diabolical consumption. And there are two things I want you to understand about this. First, that however depressing it might seem, it is really a change for the better. And secondly, I would draw your attention to the means by which it has been brought about. It is a change for the better. The great and toothsome sinners are made out of the very same material as those horrible phenomena, the great saints. The virtual disappearance of such material may mean insipid meals for us, But is it not utter frustration and famine for the enemy? He did not create these humans. He did not become one of them and die among them for torture in order to produce candidates for limbo, failed humans. He wanted to make them saints, gods, things like himself. In the dullness of your present fare, not a very small price to pay for the delicious knowledge that his whole great experiment is petering out. But not only that, as the great sinners grow fewer, and the majority lose all individuality, the great sinners become far more agents for us. Every dictator or even demagogue, almost every film star or crooner, can now draw tens of thousands of the human sheep to him. They give themselves, what there is of them, to him, in him to us. There may come a time when we shall have no need to bother about individual temptation at all, except for the few. Catch the bellwether, and his whole flock comes after him. But do you realize how we have succeeded in reducing so many of the human race to the level of ciphers? This has not come about by accident. It has been our answer, and a magnificent answer it is, to one of the most serious challenges we ever had to face. And that's the end of the Screwtape letters. I hope you've enjoyed this, and it's given you some food for thought. Where are you on your walk, your journey in this life? The dash between the date of your birth and what will eventually be the date of your passing. I hope this has brought you into a healthier spiritual life and will continue to encourage you to walk the narrow path through the proper gate. Until next week, when we'll begin some Christmas things, because between now and next Tuesday, Advent season starts. Until then, take care, stay safe, and God bless.